I was waiting for my number to be called at the clinic when my phone buzzed. Unknown caller, Dallas area code. "Ma," my son Mark said, voice brisk like a calendar alert. "Good news. We found you a top-rated assisted living. You move in Friday. Oh, and we accepted an offer on the farmhouse. Cash buyer, you'll love the convenience." Silence has weight. Mine fell straight through my shoes. "Mark," I said, "we didn't discuss—" "Mom, you forget things. You left a burner on last week. Jenna and I can't keep driving down for emergencies. Also, the market's cooling. We had to move." The line clicked. Just like that. 42 years of motherhood reduced to, we had to move. I stared at the clinic's floor tiles until the nurse called my name. "Miss Alvarez?" "Here," I said, and my voice sounded like someone else's. "My name is Ruth Alvarez. I'm 68 years old. I retired last spring after 4 decades on the night shift at St. Gabriel's S. I can find a vein in a storm and tell if a fever's breaking by breathing the same room air. I lose keys sometimes. I don't lose myself." The doctor listened to my chest and said, "Textbook strong. Maybe drink more water." On the drive home, yes, I still drive, and the truck still purrs, wheat stubble flashed by like short memories. When the farmhouse roof peeked into view, something in my ribs unclenched. My husband Eddie built that porch the summer our daughter Lena learned to spell cow with a K. Eddie's been gone 9 years. The porch holds. I set my purse down in the kitchen, where the light falls warm at 4 o'clock, and I made coffee I did not want. I kept hearing Mark's voice. "You move in Friday." The word that stuck wasn't Friday. It was you, not we, not please. You. That's when I remembered the thing I had forgotten to remember. The cigar box. The box sits where it always has, back of the pantry behind the mason jars, wrapped in an old bandana faded like a good sky. Eddie pressed it into my hands the night before his bypass surgery and said, "If I make it home, we'll laugh about how dramatic this is. If I don't, open it when you're ready, not when you're scared." He made it home for 4 more years. We never spoke of the box again. I pulled the bandana loose and opened the lid. Inside lay a coil of twine, a saint's medal, 3 folded papers, and a Polaroid of Eddie, grinning like a man who'd won something he didn't tell anyone about. The first paper was a letter in his careful print. "Ruthie, if your hands are shaking, set this down and drink water. I never wanted to worry you with deals and rights and terms. But I wasn't only pouring concrete in those summers out near Cotulla. A rancher paid me partly in mineral rights on 58 acres he swore were dead as a doornail. I filed them away in a company your brother Manny helped set up. If times ever turn against you, call Marjorie Keene, attorney at law, San Antonio. She knows the rest. Love you more than oxygen-y." I held the paper to my chest and let the house be quiet. The second paper was a deed, stamped, signed, and sleep-colored from years of dark. The third was a 1-page agreement with numbers that didn't look big until you multiplied them by forever. When people say an old woman smiled, they rarely add why. I smiled because Mark's sentence had rearranged my kitchen, and Eddie's sentence put everything back where it belonged. I called the number on the letter. "Keene Law, and may I speak to Marjorie?" A crisp female voice came on. "Marjorie Keene. My husband was Eddie Alvarez." Pause. A softer tone. "Ruth, I've been waiting years to hear from you." "You knew I'd call?" "Eddie assumed you'd never need to, but he said if the day came, it would come all at once." "It did," I said. "It arrived as Friday." She laughed gently. "Can you come tomorrow?" "I can come now." Her office smelled like lemon oil and paper that could swing a door shut. Marjorie had silver hair you trust immediately and a ring that looked like it had negotiated with history. She took the deed, read Eddie's letter, and nodded. "Your husband was careful," she said. "And private, your company, Bright Porch, LLC, still holds those rights. Also, a ladder of royalties from 2 neighboring tracts that started producing 3 years ago." "Producing?" I said the word like a person repeating test results. "Oil. Not Permian crazy, but steady. You've accrued distributions, substantial ones." I don't Know what substantial means in lawyer. It means you could live the rest of your days on your porch, replace the roof every spring for fun, and tip the mailman so much he retires early. I exhaled a laugh that surprised me. It sounded like a door opening. Marjorie stacked new papers beside the old, then looked up. What's the immediate fire? My son accepted an offer on my farmhouse. He plans to move me into assisted living. Does he have power of attorney? He has opinions. Is the deed in your name? Mine and Eddie's. Then mine. Then he has nothing, she said, except nerve. I felt heat climb my throat. Not anger exactly. More like the body remembering it owns blood. I don't want to hurt him, I said. I do want him to stop treating me like a suitcase. Marjorie steepled her fingers. Then let's not hurt him. Let's teach him. Quietly. That's my tempo, I said. Quiet. Step 1, she said. We file to reaffirm your title, notify the realtor that no sale can proceed without your signature, and instruct the title company will contest any fraudulent conveyance. Step 2, we call the assisted living and thank them kindly. No vacancy needed. Step 3, she smiled a grandmother's mischievous smile. We choose whether to tell your son you can buy the assisted living if you'd like, or whether we let him find out another way. Another way, I said too quickly. Then I folded my hands. Another way, I repeated, like a prayer that forgives slowly. Marjorie slid a single sheet toward me. Say this when he calls, she said. Word for word if you can, then call me back. What is it? I asked. A sentence shaped like a mirror. Mark called at 6:12 p.m., an efficiency that has no time for dinner. Ma, did you see the packet Jenna dropped off? Friday is ideal. We've got a great corner room. I read it, I said, calm like a pond. Mark, darling, read this back to me. You don't move your mother. Your mother invites you to move your tone. He made the noise people make when they swallow something sharp. Mom, that's not helpful. I'll be more helpful Saturday, I said, when I sign the listing cancellation. The what? The cancellation, I repeated. I'll be at the title office with my attorney. Your what? Attorney, I said, tasting the syllables like pie. She's very nice. She wears pearls like decisions. Mom, he said, and I could hear Jenna whispering in the background. Mom, what attorney? This makes no sense. Eddie made a lot of sense, I said. He wrote it down. I ended the call before my love could soften my plan. I set the phone face down and let my hands shake. Then I made tea and waited for the kettle to announce it forgave me. On the porch, Night pulled its sweater on. I sat with Eddie's Polaroid and the stack of papers like warm bricks, and I said out loud, we're doing this slow, not to humiliate, to teach. Out by the road, a car idled and then moved on. Somewhere, a teenager laughed like a future you can't box. Saturday, the title office smelled like earnest money and overly cold air. Marjorie signed with a pen that could write on the moon. The agent blinked 3 times too many when she realized I was not a form to be filed, but a person who owned things. It's just, your son indicated, the agent began. My son, I said, and I smiled so she'd hear this as mercy. Indicated a lot of things. We canceled the listing. We filed a notice with the county so bright it might as well have been read from a church pulpit. We put the farmhouse's name back on the front door where it had never stopped living. And then Marjorie pushed another document toward me. What's that? I asked. Your oil distributions, she said. Do you want to receive monthly, or would you like to tuck them into something with teeth? With teeth, I said. I don't need more stuff. I need more reach. Marjorie's smile reached back to the girl she had been in law school. I know a community bank with a good heart and an even better need. Their small business portfolio could use someone like you. Someone like me? Patient, local, invisible until she isn't. We drove 2 blocks to a brick bank that smelled like pennies and patience. The president, a woman with a laugh like late summer, shook my hand and said, Miss Alvarez, we keep a chair for people like you and never say their names out loud. I liked her immediately. By noon, Bright Porch, LLC owned a gentle slice of that bank's loans. Nothing predatory, nothing that would make Eddie frown, just lines of credit that kept welders welding and bakers baking. I didn't ask for details. I only asked one question. Do you lend to a marketing agency owned by Jenna Whitaker? The banker checked a screen. We do, she said. Why? No reason, I said, and I felt the porch settle another inch into the ground. On Sunday, my daughter Lena brought kolaches and a look that said she knew pieces if not the whole. "I thought you might like friends with breakfast," she said. I poured coffee, and we ate over the sink like people who know the goodness of crumbs. "Mark called me," Lena said finally. "He says you lawyered up." She did the quotes with her fingers, a habit I have never loved. "I protected my house," I said. "He says you're being unreasonable." Reasonable moved out when he made a unilateral decision about where his mother sleeps. Lena tilted her head. "Are you okay?" "I'm exact," I said. "I don't want to hurt him. I do want him to hear me." She set down her cup. "You know I love Mark, but he is the human version of a calendar invite." We both laughed, and some of the pressure left the room. "Do you need me to talk to him?" she asked. "No," I said. "He'll learn better from a different teacher." "Who?" "Life," I said, "and a woman in pearls." Monday at dawn, I drove the long way to the clinic just to pass the assisted living facility Mark had chosen. It was bright, tidy, and full of people who deserved better sons than mine had been this week. I said a small prayer for them, then another one for Mark that sounded like, "Learn cleanly." The facility director was pleasant on the phone when I canceled the tour. "We had your room ready," she said. "Keep it for someone who wants it," I replied. "I'm not done with my porch." At noon, Marjorie called. "Your son engaged an attorney. He sent a letter asking for accounting as if he were the executor of something he didn't build." "What do we do?" I asked. "We respond with the thing that makes bluster sit down. Facts." She sent over a packet that could stop traffic. Deeds, titles, banking confirmations, a short, firm letter that said, "Miss Alvarez is competent, solvent, and sovereign. Kindly govern yourselves accordingly." I read it twice, then 3 times, and felt my spine discover a new setting. That evening, Mark appeared in my driveway, headlights washing the porch like an accusation. I did not invite him in. I stepped out and let the cicadas be the only soundtrack. "Mom," he said, hand chopped in the air, "what are you doing?" "Breathing," I said, "and practicing." "Practicing what?" "Sentences that start with I, own, and end with, please listen." He shifted. He has my father's shoulders, but uses them like barricades. "This is about safety," he said. "You left a burner on." "The burner was under a kettle with 2 inches of water," I replied. "And I was in the next room paying a bill. That's called multitasking. Women invented it. Jenna says a lot of things when she's full of plans." He exhaled hard. "Do you even know what your house is worth? This is the only window to get you liquid." "Mark," I said gently, "every sentence you start is a spreadsheet trying not to be rude." He swallowed. The tendons in his neck remembered they were once soft. "We're trying to help," he said. "And I'm trying to teach," I answered. "Teach what?" "That your mother isn't a suitcase." We stood in the glow of his headlights until the moths looked like thoughts. "I won't sign," I said finally. "And please don't present forged versions. The county clerk and I are having lunch on Wednesday." He stared, then blinked twice, then looked down at his shoes, like maybe they had better news. "Fine," he said, a word that has never meant fine. "But don't call me when you fall." "I'll be too busy standing," I said. "With the rail I stained myself." He left faster than he arrived. Dust swirled. Night settled. Somewhere a teen laughed again, closer this time, as if the future had circled back to watch the present. I slept with the windows cracked and the porch light on, the way Eddie liked it when storms were forecast. No storm came. Morning did, crisp and nosy, peeking into every room as if to count my resolve. Before coffee, I walked the kitchen like a nurse doing rounds. Stove knobs labeled, timer set near the kettle, pill case for the week, filled and snapped shut. I said out loud for the house to hear, "Competent, solvent, sovereign," and the refrigerator hummed like a witness. At 9, Marjorie called. "How's your pulse?" "Slow and steady." "Good, a courier dropped an envelope on my desk. Your son's lawyer is requesting a full accounting of assets and capacity evaluation." "Capacity," I repeated, tasting the patronizing in it. "We'll handle it," she said. "But I'd like to add a layer you control, a home safety assessment, voluntary. You'll ace it and it makes guardianship petitions sit down." "I like assessments I can pass," I said. "Send them." "Already did, noon today." And Ruth, after that, can you meet me at the bank? There's a way to turn those distributions into something with a heartbeat. Noon brought a woman named Della in clean sneakers and a clipboard. I'm not here to judge, Miss Alvarez, she said. I'm here to write down what works. Plenty works, I said, and I showed her. We walked the hall, night lights plugged in, throw rugs edged with non-slip tape, carbon monoxide detector with a new battery that chirped obediently when she pressed it. In the kitchen, I demonstrated the kettle routine. Flame low, timer set, kettle whistle, timer ring, hand on handle, and she smiled like teachers do when the quiet kid answers from the back row. She asked me to boil a pot of water and carry it to the sink. I did. She asked me to read the label on my blood pressure meds and say the dosage. I did. She asked me what I'd do if a pan caught fire. Smother it, don't move it, I said, and I put a lid on an empty pan just to show her the motion. In the bedroom, she checked the height of the bed, the reach of the lamp, the cane I don't use but keep, like a fire extinguisher for bones. In the bathroom, she tested the grab bar Eddie insisted on after his bypass. We argued about it once. I said it made the room look like a hospital. He said, "It makes the room look like you'll live here longer." He won, and I have thanked him 100 times. Della closed her clipboard. Miss Alvarez, if the state wrote the manual for safe to age in place, they'd use your house as the pictures. Send a copy to my son, I said gently. She looked at me the way nurses look at families who love with clumsy hands. I can send it to anyone you authorize. Send it to my attorney. She'll aim it where it needs to go. At 2, I slid into a booth at the community bank. It smelled like pennies and clean ledgers. The president, a woman named Patrice, with laugh lines like good roads, shook my hand. Miss Alvarez, welcome back. Marjorie slid a folder toward me. Bright Porch can either take monthly distributions or it can place a portion into the bank's small business lending pool. The returns aren't flashy. They are decent and decently helpful. I'm not looking to light fireworks, I said. I'm looking to keep porch lights on. Patrice nodded. That's us. We signed. Paper has a heartbeat when it changes something you can touch. Somewhere a welder would buy a better torch. Somewhere a baker would fix a mixer before dawn. Somewhere an old woman's mineral rights would end up as flour and tuition. Before we left, I asked Patrice a question I'd been saving. Does your portfolio include a marketing agency owned by my son's wife? Patrice checked politely. Whitaker and Field? Yes. Solid campaign work. 2 late payments this quarter. Offer them a forbearance meeting, I said. But only if she brings a real plan and real books. No show pony decks with glitter philosophy. Patrice smiled with her eyes. We don't accept glitter as collateral. I don't want them to drown, I added. I just want them to learn how to swim without standing on my shoulders. Back home, the mailbox held 2 envelopes, one fat, one thin. The fat one had Marjorie's return address, copies of filings, a gold star of a home safety report, and a cover letter that said, in lawyer music, that I was not to be tested like a smoke alarm. The thin one wore the county seal. I peeled it open at the sink like it might bite. Hearing set for 2 weeks hence. Petition for temporary guardianship and management of estate, filed by my son's attorney with sentences so softly worded they squeaked. I read it twice. Safety, best interest, cognitive concerns. They stacked euphemisms like pillows under a boulder and hoped it wouldn't roll. I called Marjorie. They picked a fight with paperwork. They picked a class, she said. We'll teach it. I already uploaded the safety audit and your doctor's letter. The judge is pragmatic. He'll want to hear you. I'll wear the blue dress, I said, the one Eddie liked. And we'll bring the sentence that never fails. What sentence? Help is not control with better branding, she said. Some judges collect phrases. He collects that one. We hung up. I made tea. The kettle sang, the timer rang. Habit is a handrail even when the stairs get steeper. Just before dusk, Lena pulled into the driveway with a bag of groceries and a face that said she had been talking to her brother. Can I come in? She asked. You never have to ask. She set tomatoes and chicken on the counter, then leaned back on her palms. Mark spun up, she said. He told me he filed something you won't like. He says he's protecting assets from deterioration. My person is not a car, I said, but thank you to the metaphor for trying. He's scared, she said softly. That's his whole problem. He's always been scared of being the one who failed to act. I don't mind action, I said. I mind arrogance dressed in fluorescent vest and clipboard. We cooked in the comfortable silence of women who already did the talking years ago. When we sat, she asked, "What happens at the hearing?" "I tell the truth," I said. The judge listens. Marjorie quotes a sentence that fits. "And Mark?" "He sits in a chair he doesn't like," I said, "and learns something he needs." Lena toyed with her fork. "Do you want me there?" "Yes," I said. "Not because I need backup, because I like daughters." She smiled and reached across the table for my hand. Her hands are my hands, younger, impatient with lotion. "I'll be there." After she left, the yard got very still, like a breath held. A car crept past and then stopped. Headlights rested on my mailbox. I waited. The car idled. Then a door opened and closed, and footsteps came up the walk with the uncertainty of someone who rehearsed bravado in the car and forgot their lines on the path. Jenna stood at the bottom step in a blazer too sharp for the bugs. "Ruth," she said, letting my name try to do the work of an apology. "Evening," I said. She glanced at the porch swing, then at the dark windows, as if a camera crew might pop out. "I heard you canceled the assisted living. The room deposit is non-refundable." "Then let it refund someone else's anxiety," I said. She looked down at her shoes. I may have pushed Mark. Hard. He listens to me when he's drowning. "I prefer teaching him to float," I said. She swallowed. "My agency's cash flow has been irregular. A big client delayed payment. I saw the farmhouse sale as relief valves on 3 problems at once. I told myself it was best for everyone." "Did you tell yourself it was kind?" I asked. Her eyes filmed. "She's not a villain. She's a person who confuses urgency with virtue." "No," she said. "Not when I'm honest." "Good. Honesty helps oxygen find a seat." She glanced up. "Patrice called, from the bank. Offered us a forbearance meeting if I bring a real plan." "You should take it," I said. "Bring receipts, not adjectives." "I will." She hesitated, then added, "Ruth, if you crush us, we'll deservedly flatten. If you offer a rope, I will climb it." "I'm not in the crushing business," I said. "But ropes come with knots. You tie one yourself and you teach Mark how." She nodded. "I can do that." Then quieter. "For what it's worth, I didn't want to take your porch. I wanted to stop the sound in Mark's head that says, he's failing you." "The sound in Mark's head belongs to Mark," I said. "I will not rent space there." She let out a breath that might have been a small sob if she'd left it alone. "Thank you for talking to me. Thank you for coming without a plan to win." She left. The night stitched itself back up. I sat on the porch and felt for Eddie the way you feel for a light switch in the dark. Open hand on familiar wall. 2 days later, the home safety report, the doctor's letter, and Marjorie's packet landed in the judge's portal. A clerk stamped our hearing date bold enough to read without glasses. We had 12 days. I used them like a woman uses a good pantry. I stocked up on rest. I straightened closets nobody would see. I ironed the blue dress and sewed a button on the cuff that had been loose since a wedding I barely remember. I walked the fence line and tied back the rows that kept snagging passers-by because mercy should include shirt sleeves. On the 3rd night, Mark texted, "We need to talk." I typed back, "Yes, here, porch daylight." He arrived Saturday afternoon with no Jenna, no swagger, just the hollow clank of someone who brought an argument and lost it in the car. He didn't sit. He hovered, pacing the bottom step like a defendant who hadn't decided whether to plead. "Mom," he began, "I'm not your enemy." "You're my son," I said. "Sometimes you moonlight." He winced, then tried a different angle. "Do you even know how many scams target seniors? The paperwork? Mom, you could sign something and lose everything." "I've been signing IV consents and narcotics logs since before you discovered breakfast cereal mascots," I said. "I know ink." "This isn't about ink," he snapped. "It's about decline." My face cooled. "Say that word again, slowly." He did not. He sat finally 2 steps below me like a catechism student. "I don't want to be the kid in the story who looks back and thinks, if only I'd acted." "You acted," I said. "You acted on me, not with me." His shoulders fell. The barricades drooped. What do you want me to do? Show up in court, I said. Sit still. Listen. Then come home and help me repair the back porch rail. It splintered in last winter's freeze. He blinked. That's it? For now, I said. Also, call your sister. Ask how she is. Every conversation shouldn't be a tactical briefing. He nodded, small, like a man practicing humility with training wheels. I can do that. We sat without talking for a while. A mockingbird tried new material in the elm. A neighbor kid rattled past on a bike with a playing card clipped to the spokes to make pretend thunder. It worked. Mark stood. I'll see you in court, he said. You'll see me everywhere, I said. And for the first time in days, I watched him understand that sentence the way I meant it. When he left, I gathered the papers for the hearing into a neat stack and slid Eddie's Polaroid on top like a seal. I don't much care for drama, but I do appreciate an audience that learns. The courthouse would be a classroom. I had my lesson plan. I slept well that night. The kind of sleep that doesn't bargain. In the morning, I took the blue dress out of its bag and held it up to the light. It caught a line of sun and glowed like permission. The county envelope with the hearing instructions sat on the table. I flipped it over to the blank side, wrote one sentence in my own careful hand, and tucked it into my purse in case nerves made me forget. Help is not control with better branding. 2 more sunrises, and we'd see who believed it. You said, I woke before the alarm and lay still, listening to the house remember me. The refrigerator clicked. The hot water heater cleared its throat. Somewhere under the porch, a cricket tuned up like a nervous oboist before the symphony. I made coffee and opened a yellow pad. Today, I wrote, we learn with numbers. At 10, Patrice at the bank ushered us into a glass-walled room that tried to look casual and failed. Jenna arrived early, hair pulled back like a truce, laptop under her arm, no glitter decks in sight. Good sign. Mark came in tight-jawed, carrying a folder like a shield. Patrice smiled the way good bankers do, calm, unafraid of bad weather. Thanks for coming. This is a forbearance discussion, not a firing squad. We need clarity, a plan, and proof that the plan has feet. Jenna nodded. We lost a medical client in Q2 when their CMO left. 2 other clients slowed payments. We cut contractors, sublet half our suite, and I cut my own pay 40%. She slid a spreadsheet across. I brought actuals, 3-month projection, contingencies if the slow pays turn to no pays. Patrice studied the pages, then looked up. You were late twice and you told no one. That's how a small wave becomes a flood. I was ashamed, Jenna said. Shame isn't a strategy, Patrice replied. Transparency is. Mark shifted. We thought the farmhouse sale would... We don't fix business leaks by selling our elders' roofs, Patrice said, pleasant but firm. We fix them by measuring the hole and patching it from the right side. I like Patrice more with every sentence. Jenna swallowed. What do you need from me now? A weekly cash report until you string 2 on-time payments together, Patrice said. Interest only for 90 days if, and only if, you hit 3 operational milestones. Signed retainer from a replacement client, sublease contract executed, and proof you've moved hosting off that overpriced vendor. She tapped a line item. You're paying couture prices for a t-shirt. Jenna almost smiled. You're not wrong. Patrice turned to me. Miss Alvarez, since Bright Porch participates in this portfolio, you're welcome to speak. I kept my hands folded on the table the way I did in pre-op consults when family members needed to hear instructions and grace at the same time. I'm not here to swing a hammer, I said. I'm here to make sure the roof you repair doesn't cave on anyone else. Bring receipts. Call when you're short before you're late. If you need a rope, say rope. Don't call it weather. Jenna looked at me the way a student looks at a teacher who didn't give up when she could have. Yes, ma'am. Patrice printed the forbearance terms, and Jenna signed like someone too young to know relief is a cousin of discipline. Mark didn't sign anything. He watched the pen move like it might bite him. On the sidewalk afterward, he tried a half smile. Thanks for not crushing us. I'm not in the crushing business, I said. I'm in the keeping lights on business. Yours, mine, the bakers, the welders. He nodded and scuffed his shoe like a boy who'd accidentally told the truth. I don't know how to stand where you're standing. You stand long enough, you earn the view, I said. There aren't shortcuts, there are chairs. He frowned. Chairs? Chairs you sit in when you're scared, to think instead of flail. I walked home the long way past the vocational school on Maple, where teenagers in steel-toe boots leaned over engine blocks like surgeons. A hand-painted banner flapped, "Tool Drive Saturday." I stopped by the office. A woman with sawdust on her cardigan looked up. "Can I help you?" "You already are," I said, and I told her who I was and what Eddie left. "If a wrench keeps a boy out of a courtroom," I added, "I'd like to buy the wrench." She laughed through a breath. "You're an angel." "Angels are hard on knees," I said. "I'm a nurse with a ledger." We set up a porch grant, no plaque, just paid invoices. Ratchets, torque wrenches, one welder they'd been saving up for with bake sales and raffle tickets. I wrote the first check with steady hand. Tools are apologies that make good. On my way out, a student held the door. "Ma'am," he said, "I like your boots." "Comfort outruns fashion," I told him. "Write that down." At home, the answering machine, yes, I still have one, blinked like a small lighthouse. Marjorie's voice. Judge advanced the hearing to Friday morning. He read the file, said, "No sense letting this stew." Good news, he denied the ex parte request for temporary control. Bad news, your son will be angrier about losing the shortcut. I unplugged the iron and set the blue dress in the closet, where it could rest until it had to work. That evening, Lena brought pie and the kind of gossip that's really prayer requests in regular clothes. "The county clerk loves your safety audit," she said. "Says she wants you to teach her mother the kettle routine." "I'll bring cookies for the workshop," I said. We ate on the porch. Dusk softened the fence line. A pair of doves practiced being monogamous on the wire. After plates were scraped, Lena reached for my hand. "You sure you don't want me to talk to Mark tonight?" "I want him to hear his own feet on the porch," I said. "It's hard to learn your weight from someone else's mouth." When she left, I cleaned the kitchen like the night before a big day on the ward. Surfaces cleared, coffee set up, mug out, spoon placed where a sleepy hand would expect it. Habit is a handrail. I keep saying that because it keeps being true. Just before 9, headlights slowed in front of the house and kept going. A minute later, they returned and parked. I waited. If I've learned anything, it's that storm systems with first names announce themselves without knocking. This knock was hesitant. 2 beats, like a question practicing its consonants. I opened the door to find a woman older than me by a decade, hair set for a week's worth of church, purse clutched like a verdict. "You don't know me," she began. "I'm Mrs. Whitaker." "Jenna's mother," I said. "She told me not to bother you," Mrs. Whitaker rushed on, "but I had to come. I raised my daughter to be brave, not bossy. Sometimes the wires cross. I wanted to say I'm sorry for any part of this that's ours." I waved her toward the swing. "If you apologize out here, the swing keeps it secret." She sat and exhaled like a tire finding the nail. "My husband took care of everything until he didn't. After he passed, I panicked and started taking care of everyone else. It's a sickness with a respectable costume. Control with better branding," I said. Her eyes widened. "You said the sentence." "It's a good sentence," I said. "I'm taking it to court on Friday." She nodded. "Jenna told me you offered a rope." She paused. "She'll climb it." "Tell her to knot it for the next person," I said. We rocked a while, the way strangers become less so when the porch agrees to be Switzerland. When she stood, she touched my forearm. "I don't know if it matters," she said, "but I taught Jenna to write thank you notes on paper." "It matters," I said. "Paper sometimes outlives the lesson and keeps teaching." After she left, I sat with Eddie's Polaroid in the cigar box like they could vote. "We're doing it, honey," I said. "Slow and decent." The next morning, the mail brought a thick envelope from Marjorie. Tabs, exhibits, the kind of order that makes panic step aside. On top, a single page in her tidy print. "Talk like yourself," underlined, twice. I practiced my answers while I watered the roses. Name, age, occupation, retired nurse. Who does your shopping? I do, plus Lena when I'm lazy. Describe your stove routine. Timer, whistle, handle. What do you want? To live where I've paid with years. Any reason your son believes you're unsafe? He confuses control with care. I love him enough to separate those words. At noon, Patrice called. Whitaker and Field sent their first weekly report. Thin, honest. I like honest thin more than fat fiction. Me too, I said. Fat fiction stains. After lunch, I drove to the courthouse just to see the building without adrenaline. I like to meet rooms before they meet me. The steps were higher than they needed to be, and the wood doors smelled like everyone who'd ever regretted something. Inside, a bailiff nodded at me as if we already knew each other. Maybe we do. Widows and bailiffs pass each other more than you'd expect. Back home, a text waited from Mark. I'll be there at 8:30. I typed back, I will too. Wear something that listens. He replied with a thumbs up, which is the punctuation mark of men who still don't know how to cry in daylight. I ironed the blue dress again because smoothing fabric smooths nerves. I set out my low heels, the ones Lena calls sensible, and I call, I'd like to feel my feet at noon. I placed Eddie's Polaroid in my purse pocket, where my hand finds it without looking. As night gathered, the porch gathered too. Crickets filed their briefs, air thickened enough to hold a sentence aloft. I whispered the one Marjorie likes, then I whispered my own. Help that replaces choice is not help. The house settled. I slept. Morning would dress itself in oak and seal and all rise. I would rise, and when the judge asked what I wanted, I would tell him plainly and then let silence do its part. Between now and then, there was only one thing left to do. Lay my palm flat on the porch rail Eddie stained and promise it I'd bring it home one more time. See you tomorrow, I told the wood. It said nothing, which is the porch's way of saying it believed me. The courthouse smelled like oiled wood and yesterday's arguments. I like to arrive early to rooms that might judge me. Chairs tell the truth before people do. These were straight-backed, earnest, and a little mean about knees. I chose one near the aisle so my blue dress could find the light. Lena slid in beside me with a thermos of coffee and a look that said she could lift a car if I needed. You ready? She whispered. I was born in a delivery room, I whispered back. Ready is my hometown. Mark arrived at 8:32, tie too tight, hair cut like an apology. He sat 2 rows behind me with Jenna, who stared at her hands as if they were new to her. Marjorie appeared like a sentence arriving exactly when grammar needs it. Pearls, tidy folder, no perfume, but something that smelled like decisions cooled on a windowsill. Miss Alvarez, she said softly, today we keep our verbs short. The bailiff called the courtroom to rise. The judge entered, a man with steady eyes and a robe that looked less like costume and more like uniform. He glanced at the docket, then at me, then at the row of lawyers, as if weighing which words would earn daylight. 'Cause number, he read, and the numbers poured like a faucet. In the matter of Ruth Alvarez. He looked up. Good morning, Miss Alvarez. Good morning, Your Honor, I said, rising, and my knees behaved. He scanned the petition. We're here on an application for temporary guardianship and management of estate, filed by Miss Alvarez's son through counsel. We'll take evidence and argument, but let's save ourselves from the weeds if we can. Counsel for petitioner? A young man in a suit, still learning its owner, stood. He said a lot of words that leaned on the furniture. Safety, best interest, cognitive decline, risk, deterioration. He held up Della's safety audit as if it might help him and then realized, mid-sentence, that it did not. He tried again with the burner story. He tried very hard. When he finished, the judge turned to Marjorie. Counsel? Marjorie stood like someone who knows how to fold a map. Your Honor, this is a case about the difference between care and control. We submitted Miss Alvarez's physician letter, the home safety assessment, copies of titles and deeds, and proof of recent financial transactions Miss Alvarez executed correctly and to good effect. Also, Miss Alvarez is present and ready to testify. She is competent, she is solvent, she is sovereign. Sovereign, the judge repeated as if checking its fit on his tongue. Let's hear from Miss Alvarez. I walked to the witness stand like a woman carrying coffee to a sleeping shift, carefully with respect for gravity. The clerk held out a Bible. I laid my hand on it, thought of Eddie's Polaroid in my purse, and swore to tell the truth, which I have always preferred because I don't have the memory to keep track of lies. Marjorie's questions were calm stones across a creek. State your name. Ruth Elena Alvarez. Age? 68. Occupation? Retired nurse. 40 years night shift. Do you live alone? Yes. Do you manage your own medications? Yes. Pill case by day. Alarms on my phone. Describe your stove routine. Flame low, timer set, kettle whistle, timer ring, hand on handle. Soft laughter rippled like a friendly wind in the gallery. The judge smiled with his eyes. Who does your shopping? I do. If it's raining hard or I'm lazy, my daughter Lena brings groceries and gossip. Do you pay your own bills? Yes, online. I write confirmation numbers in a notebook with a blue pen because blue shows up better on receipts. Marjorie nodded toward the stack of exhibits. Miss Alvarez, did you recently open a meeting at your community bank to place business distributions into a lending pool for small local enterprises? Yes. Why did you choose that? I like porch lights staying on. A pause. Do you understand the petition your son filed? It says he wants to protect me by taking over my life and my house. How do you feel about that? Help is not control with better branding, I said, and the room went as still as rain deciding whether to fall. Marjorie stepped back. No further questions. The judge leaned forward. Miss Alvarez, what do you want? To live in the house I paid for with years, I said, and to be consulted, not managed. He nodded, like a man checking an instrument reading he trusts. Petitioner's counsel approached with steps too quick for the floor. Miss Alvarez, did you leave a burner on? I left a burner on under a kettle with 2 inches of water while I paid a bill within arm's reach. That's called making tea when you're also living. Have you ever been scammed by email or phone? I've hung up on 3 princes, 2 lotteries, and a grandson who wasn't my grandson. If a caller knows my social security number better than my favorite pie, they're a liar. He blinked. Do you ever forget names? Yes, I said, especially of men in blue suits who condescend. I remember their verbs, though. He flushed. No further questions. Jenna's lawyer stood next and surprised me by saying, Your Honor, with the court's permission, my client would like to make a statement. The judge hesitated, then nodded. Briefly. Jenna walked to the lectern without papers. Judge, I push this, she said. I told my husband the farmhouse sale would solve 3 problems at once. Our business cash flow, his fear, and his mother's safety. I labeled it love. It was pressure with a false mustache. I'm sorry. The judge considered her, like a teacher deciding whether a late assignment still deserves ink. Thank you, he said. Sit down. He turned to Mark. Mr. Alvarez? Mark stood slow as if the air had thickened. He moved to the aisle, but not the lectern. Hands knit like he was ready to pray if someone else started. I don't want my mother hurt, he said. Ever. I thought action equals love. I didn't ask for directions from the person I was moving. I'm sorry. I stared at my son, and I saw him at 6 in cowboy pajamas, lower lip trembling because the dog had run off and he couldn't fix it. Men keep some pictures in the same folder forever. The judge settled back. All right, he said. My ruling is not a surprise to anyone who read the file. Petition is denied. No temporary guardianship, no management of estate. Miss Alvarez is competent and her safety precautions exceed what I saw in my own mother's house. If the parties need a sentence to carry home, here it is. Help is not control with better branding. He rapped his gavel once, not as a punishment, as punctuation. One more thing, he added. Mr. Alvarez, care is asking before arranging. He looked at me. Miss Alvarez, do you have anything further for the court? Yes, Your Honor, I said. Mercy is leverage that chose a better name. I didn't plan to say it. Eddie sent it through me like a note. The judge's mouth twitched. If you ever tire of retirement, Miss Alvarez, we have a bench that could use your aphorisms. The room chuckled. We're adjourned. The bailiff called, All rise, and we did. The wood doors released their smells. People spilled into the corridor like relieved water. Outside the courtroom, adrenaline finally looked around and realized it was not needed. It left. My legs felt like they had done a day's work and wanted pie. Mark approached, hands empty, eyes unarmored. Mom, he said, voice small enough to fit in a pocket. Can I walk you to the car? You can walk me to the bench, I said, and then you can go get a hammer. He winced. The rail? The rail, Jenna stepped forward. Ruth, may I? You may send me your plan from the bank meeting, weekly, real numbers. If you're late, you call before you miss. If you need a rope, you say rope. I will, she said, tears taking off their sunglasses. And thank you for not turning the knife. I'm not a knife person, I said. I'm a wedge that keeps doors from shutting. Marjorie joined us, her folder now thinner, like a story that found its end. Nicely done, she said. I've filed for attorney's fees against the petition as a gentle reminder to read statutes before scaring mothers. The judge will likely split costs to keep the peace. I don't need their money, I said. You don't, she agreed. But court records teach other sons how not to try this again. We reached a wooden bench under a sun-faded flag. I sat. My feet sighed. Mark hovered. Sit, I said. He did, like a man who'd been waiting all morning to obey a simple verb. We were quiet in the way families earn after hard mornings. People streamed past with paper envelopes full of reordered lives. A kid in a hoodie carried a skateboard and relief. A bailiff held a door for an old man who still had the farm in his hands. Mark swallowed. I thought you were slipping, he admitted. I slip sometimes, I said. On ice or pride. I catch myself. I wanted to prevent a tragedy. What you wanted was to prevent regret, I said. They're cousins. Only one of them is honest. The other wears capes. He nodded, tears threatening, then retreating. I don't know how to make this right. You start with wood, I said. You sand where you splintered. You call your sister tonight and ask about her day without turning it into a status update. And you bring Jenna to the vocational school on Saturday to carry boxes for the tool drive. He half laughed. Community service? Community introduction, I said. You'll like the smell of a place that teaches, with torque. He stood. Okay. Then he surprised me. Mom, can I hug you? You can always ask, I said, and I'll almost always say yes. He hugged me like a boy who remembers the exact height of his mother's shoulder. When he let go, he looked older in a better way. Jenna came back from a call with Patrice. The bank finalized forbearance, she said. I'm sending the plan in an hour. And Ruth, my mother wants to bring a casserole tonight. She's very Baptist about resolutions. I accept food from most denominations, I said. Tell her to come by 6. We parted with logistics instead of grievances, which is a mercy you can stack on a shelf and use again. Lena drove me home. At a red light, she grinned. You were a sermon? I prefer recipes, I said, but I'll take what works. At the house, I changed into work jeans. Mark arrived 10 minutes later with a toolbox that looked like it had been to war and a face that had decided to survive. We walked to the back porch. The rail Eddie stained had a long split where winter had pried it apart. Mark ran his hand along the break, winced and set to work, pulling the section off, clamping the pieces, planing the edge, gluing, bracing, smiling for no one when the clamp held. Manual competence is a kind of confession. Tomorrow, he said, I'll sand and restain. Tomorrow, I echoed, bring a drop cloth or I'll make you scrub the deck with a toothbrush like a Marine. Jenna arrived with lemonade and humility. She set the tray down like an offering and didn't try to narrate. I liked that. As the sun slid rightward, a car pulled into the gravel, slow and careful. Mrs. Whitaker stepped out with a covered dish insulated by a church bulletin. She navigated the steps as if they might test her. Baked ziti, she announced. Feeds a problem or two. Bless you, I said. Leave it in the kitchen. The table understands strangers. She did, then returned to the porch and watched Mark work. My daddy used to say, she offered, you repair what you break even when you didn't mean to break it. He was right, I said. Also when you meant to. Mark looked at me but kept sanding. Good. We ate ziti at the picnic table behind the house, paper plates, laughter, finding its legs again. No one said court. No one said guardianship. We said, pass the pepper, watch the bees. That cloud looks like a dog. After dishes, Jenna checked her phone. Ruth, I sent the first weekly to Patrice, and I wrote a note for you. She handed me an envelope, the old kind Mrs. Whitaker had bragged about. I read it later, alone on the porch. The paper absorbed apology like it had practice. She didn't ask to be forgiven like a debt canceled. She asked to be trusted like a bill paid on time for a while. That's the right category. The porch light clicked on with the timer Eddie wired 15 summers ago. Habit keeps faith with us even when we wander. I was gathering plates when my phone buzzed. Marjorie. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Better than okay," she said. "A courier just dropped something odd at my office addressed to you. From Eddie's old safety deposit box we thought we'd emptied. It seems we missed an envelope taped under the lid." My hand found the back of a chair. "What does it say?" "I didn't open it," she said. "It's yours to open, but the front reads, 'Open when you've chosen education over victory.'" I sat down. The porch felt like a cathedral where you're allowed to laugh. "I'll come by in the morning," I said. "Bring your pearls," she teased. "I have a blue dress," I said, "and a rail that's drying." We hung up. The yard was quiet except for the easy sounds of a house that believed in me. I put Jenna's note in the cigar box with Eddie's letter and the Polaroid, then closed the lid like a period that knows another sentence is on the way. Tomorrow, another envelope, another choice. Mercy with a map. I turned off the porch light and let the stars have their turn at telling us where to look. Marjorie slid the small square envelope across her desk with 2 fingers, the way a nurse hands over a newborn, careful, certain, a little amused that life still knows how to surprise us. "From the box we thought was empty," she said. "Tape under the lid. On the front, Eddie's block print, 'Open when you've chosen education over victory.' I suppose I qualify," I said. "Twice over," Marjorie replied. "Go on." Inside lay a folded note, a cashier's check so old the paper had gone the color of tea, and a single brass key with number 12 stamped into it. The note read, "Ruthie, if you're opening this, you pick the long road, the one with mile markers made of patience. Good. There's a small check to prime a pump and a key to a storage unit off County Road 9. What's inside isn't worth much unless you count what it can build. Name the work what you want, but don't call it charity. Call it practice. Love, E. P.S. Mercy is leverage that chose a better name." I laughed the kind of laugh that includes water in the corners of the eyes. "He's bossing me around from the afterlife," I said. "Looks like he left you a starter kit," Marjorie said. "Want company at the storage unit?" "I want witnesses if there are spiders," I said. We drove out past the feed store and the bait shop that announces worms, so large the worms must blush. The storage place was a row of orange doors baking in the sun like construction paper tongues. Unit 12 opened to a smell I could have named even if you blindfolded me. Oil, pine, old wool. Eddie's world condensed to dust motes. On 2 sawhorses, his planer, his clamps, a toolbox neatly labeled in the handwriting of a man who believed in order and in leaving people he loved with as few mysteries as possible. Against the wall, 3 bundles of cedar rails, sanded once, waiting for weather and purpose. On top, a cigar box twin to the one in my pantry. Inside it, a stack of index cards tied with twine. Each card bore an aphorism on one side and a story prompt on the other. "Quiet thunder cards," I said out loud before I realized I had said anything. The name arrived whole, like some things do when they've been waiting. Marjorie grinned. "Program name?" "Program Bones," I said. "We'll flesh it soon." By afternoon, Eddie's tools were in the truck, the check in my purse, the cards on the seat beside me like polite passengers. Back home, Jenna's weekly cash report pinged my phone, thin, honest, precise. 10 minutes later, Patrice texted, "On time. Plan is real." I wrote back, "Ropes tied?" She answered, "2 knots. Working on 3rd. I called Jenna. "One more condition," I said. "Not for the bank, for me." "I'll do it," she said, not yet knowing what it was. "You're going to record a video, not for the internet to eat, for the vocational school kids and the bank's small business class. Title it, 'When Help Pretends to Be Control.' You will say what you did, why you did it, what it cost, and what you're doing now. No blame, no weather reports, just verbs." She was quiet, then, "Okay, I can do that." And, I added, "You'll make a second shorter version for older folks, my age and up, showing them what healthy help looks like from adult children. Steps, examples, a sentence to memorize." "What sentence?" "Care is asking before arranging," I said. Jenna exhaled like someone lowering a heavy box. "I'll send drafts by Friday." That night, Mark and I finished sanding the repaired rail. He moved slower than normal, attention on the grain the way a man reads a letter from someone he finally trusts. We set the rail on blocks for the stain to dry and covered it with a drop cloth. "You ever notice," he said, "how wood forgives with time and pressure?" "Trees practice patience longer than we do," I said. We cleaned brushes. He left. The house settled. At 11:17 p.m., a car door slammed hard enough to make the porch light flinch. Footsteps wrapped the walk. The knock came loud, unpracticed. I opened the door to find Mark, eyes glassy, breath vinegary, the sway of a man who made friends with a bar stool and regretted it on the drive home. "Mom," he said too brightly, "we should talk about the—" He gestured vaguely at the world. His hand clipped the sawhorse. The drop cloth slid. The half-dry rail skidded to the floor and kissed a nail head. A fresh gouge opened like a mouth that had something to say and decided to say it rudely. We both stared at the cut. Mark's mouth worked. I didn't mean—" "Drunk men mean," I said, voice low. "They mean calculation doesn't have to be written down to be real." He flinched, then tried to straighten. "I only had—" "We are not measuring ounces," I said. "We are counting consequences." He put both hands on his head like a boy caught between lying and breaking. "I don't know how to be," he said. "I thought action equals love. Then you outacted me. I don't know what to do with the part of me that only calms down if I'm in charge." "You put him to bed," I said, "and you talk to the quieter part in the morning." He sank onto the bottom step. The porch watched without comment. I made coffee strong enough to argue. We sat, cups warming our hands like decent props. "I'm ashamed," he said. "Good," I said. "Shame is a door. Don't hang curtains on it. Walk through." He looked at the gouged rail. "I'll fix it." "You'll learn from fixing it," I said. We sat. The night softened around the edges, as if someone were sanding it too. "Tomorrow," I said, "you'll call your doctor and tell him alcohol sings too sweet in your ear after stress. You'll ask for tools that aren't bottles. Then you'll call a meeting with Jenna where both of you talk about fear like grown-ups, not like foremen." He nodded, tears happening without permission. "It's hard for men. The body has to find the exits again." Inside, I brought the cigar box back to the porch and set the new stack of index cards between us. "Eddie left homework," I said. I pulled one at random and read the front. "Spend names slow, spend receipts slower, spend mercy fastest." The back offered a prompt. "Tell the story of a time you mislabeled control as care. Then relabel it and write what you should have done." Mark gave a wet laugh. "He knew me before I did." "He knew all of us," I said. We wrote. He tried, crossed out half, tried again. Writing is a cousin of sanding. It takes down the rough in strips you can sweep. At dawn, he carried the marred rail to the sawhorses and planed the gouge. Long, thin curls fell to the deck and made a small, blonde nest. "I'll replace the section if it weakens," he said. "You'll reinforce from underneath either way," I said. "Hidden strength is still strength." At 10, Jenna came by with a laptop and 2 videos. "Rough cuts," she said. "No makeup, no music, just the truth." We watched the first. She looked into the camera like a person owning verbs. I pushed. I labeled it love. It was convenience wearing kindness. "Here's what I'm changing." She named steps, cash reports, calling before late, asking before arranging, learning the kettle routine, because no adult child should take power over a stove they've never lit. I nodded. "Good. The kids will hear the difference between apology and angle." The second video was shorter. She addressed a room of grandmothers she hadn't met yet. "When your grown children say, 'For your safety,' ask for a list. Ask what changes on Monday morning. Ask what you lose and what they gain. Then say the sentence with me. Help is not control with better branding." I stood. "That one goes in the toolkit." Jenna swallowed. "There's one more thing. My mother wants to say something. On camera. She says she's tired of being a ghost behind me." "Bring her," I said. "We'll record on the porch where sentences come out straight." We filmed that afternoon. Mrs. Whitaker sat on the swing, hands folded over a Bible and a casserole recipe, as if both were sacred texts. "I raised a daughter to be brave," she said. "Sometimes bravery wears boots and sometimes it wears blinders." If you're watching this and you like to handle people, ask whether your hands are holding or hurting. We clapped like a small studio audience that knew when the line landed. That night, the vocational school hosted the tool drive. The shop smelled like hot metal and teenage hunger shaped into competence. Mark and Jenna carried boxes, wrote name tags, listened to a 17-year-old explain why a torque wrench feels like forgiveness when you finally get it right. Patrice from the bank spoke about numbers like weather, predictable if you keep records. I told a story about a kettle and a timer and a judge who collects sentences. At the end, the shop teacher, cardigan, sawdust, pride, asked, "Miss Alvarez, why are you doing this? Don't you want to rest?" "I am resting," I said. "This is what rest feels like when it wears shoes." We loaded leftover donations. Mark took a moment by the door, eyes on the kids joking about a carburetor like it was a punchline that saved your life. "I could have been a better version of me sooner," he said. "Thank the plank you're standing on," I said. "It held while you learned." On Sunday after church, yes, I go when my knees agree and the sermon promises not to scold for sport. We set the repaired rail back in place. Mark drove the screws in with the patience of a man who knows wood can split if you hurry. We wiped excess stain and stepped back. The seam was visible if you knew where to look. I decided not to sand it invisible. "Why leave the line?" Mark asked. "So we remember," I said. "A scar is a story that agreed to stay." He nodded. "I'll tell it." That evening, Marjorie arrived with a folder and a grin. The judge signed the fee order, half to petitioner, half to nobody. He also sent a note. "Tell Miss Alvarez I stole her sentence for my next speech to the Bar Association." "Tell him I'd like credit and pie," I said. We sat on the porch, 3 women, 1 rail, a program forming, like weather you can predict if you've lived here long enough. I showed Marjorie the index cards, the check, the key. Quiet Thunder, I said, is going to be more than grants and tool drives. It's going to be a short place. "A what now?" Marjorie asked. "A short place," I repeated. "Not long-term housing, short-term landing for people who are almost moved against their will. A week, 2, enough to teach a kettle and a sentence." "You have a backlot," she said slowly. "I have cedar rails," I said, "and a son who knows how to hold a drill." Mark came out with lemonade and a look that asked if he was invited to the next chapter. "You are," I said. "Here's your first assignment. Write an outline for a class called Asking Before Arranging." He grimaced like a man who suspected homework but hoped for extra credit. "When do you want it?" "Tuesday," I said, "turned in with humility and 3 examples." He saluted and disappeared, already muttering, which is how men draft repentance. As the sun dropped, a breeze lifted the edge of Eddie's index cards. I caught them and set a small stone, a paperweight shaped like a heart Lena made in 3rd grade, on top. "Education over victory," I said, tracing the words of Eddie's note with 1 finger. "I see the sense in it." Marjorie stood to go. "You know, Act 6 writes itself, right?" she said. "You already started." "Tomorrow," I said, "we start with a sign." "What will it say?" she asked. I looked at the repaired rail, at the porch that had held me through seasons and sentences. "It will say, Quiet Thunder Program," I answered, "and under that, we don't pound to punish. We tap to time the truth." That night, I slept the sleep of someone who had put down a load she didn't know she was carrying until her hands came up empty and free. The house breathed with me. Somewhere in the dark, I swear the new rail creaked a little on purpose, just to say, "I'm here. I'm stronger where I was weak." In the morning, we'd plant posts. We'd write lesson plans. We'd hang a bell to mark arrivals and departures and the moment a sentence lands. Between now and then, I stood in the kitchen, set the flame low, turned the timer, and listened for the kettle's faithful song. Habit, handrail, hymn. Tomorrow, the porch would teach. Tonight, the porch was enough. By noon the next day, the backlot looked like a before picture begging for an after. We dragged Eddie's cedar rails into the light, measured with a carpenter's pencil that had lived behind his ear, and set string lines. Mark dug post holes while I called the sign shop. "Yes, ma'am," the young man said. "Black letters? Whiteboard?" "Creamboard," I said. "Black letters. Words exact. Quiet Thunder Program. Under that, smaller. We don't pound to punish. We tap to time the truth." He whistled softly. "That'll read." Lena showed up with cold watermelon and a box of brass screws. Jenna brought tarps, bottled water, and 0 speeches. Mrs. Whitaker arrived last, apron still on, with a thermos and 2-box lunches, for when the work outlasts the appetite. It did. By evening, we had posts in, rails set. A small gate hung straight because Mark took twice as long to hang it as he would have last month. Patience, it turns out, learns to carry its own tools. The frame for a simple cabin took shape. 1 room, bright window, wide threshold, grab bar anchored to a stud Eddie would have approved. On the porch, we hung a bell with a clear voice. "For arrivals," I said, and for the moment, a sentence lands. 2 days later, Patrice from the bank came out in flats that passed for field shoes. She toured the worksite, held her skirt out of the dust, and smiled like a ledger that balances. "Jenna's on time," she reported. 2 reports, 2 knots. 3rd knot by month's end if a retainer signs. Jenna lifted a hand. "The retainer will sign. I sent a proposal with verbs and no exclamation points." "Bless you," I said. "Punctuation should never shout at a balance sheet." Marjorie arrived with a clipboard and a lawyer's version of confetti. Permits, insurance, a memo from the county that said, in government poetry, that we could host short stays if we didn't pretend to be a hospital. "We won't," I said. "We're a porch with lessons." We picked an opening day. The sign shop delivered the board, cream and crisp. Mark mounted it with brass screws like you'd fasten a memory you planned to hand down. For the ribbon, I refused a ribbon. We used twine from Eddie's box because twine tells the truth about cutting. The vocational school kids came with torque wrench jokes. Patrice brought the bank's camera. Mrs. Whitaker brought the inevitable ziti and a prayer whispered under her breath, which I suspect God hears first because it is not performed. "Thank you for coming," I said, standing where the white gravel met the new porch. "This place is for 2 kinds of people who sometimes live in one body, elders who are almost moved like suitcases, and family who almost did the moving. We host a week or 2 of practice, kettles, sentences, asking before arranging." A teenager rang the bell by accident, and everyone laughed because community needs permission to be human. Our first guests arrived 3 days later. Mr. and Mrs. Denton, married 48 years, scared of each other for the first time. He'd fallen once. She'd decided falling meant failing. She lined up pills like soldiers and told his friends he was fragile now, in a voice that introduced him to new fragility he didn't recognize. I met them on the porch. "Welcome," I said. "We have 2 rules. Rule 1, the stove has a timer. Rule 2, the door has a bell." Mr. Denton grinned. "What about the marriage?" "That's class material," I said. "Come sit." Mark taught the first session of asking before arranging with the shaky confidence of a man speaking from fresh bruises instead of imaginary expertise. He stood beside the repaired rail and told the truth about hammers and sentences. He wrote on the chalkboard, "Ask what changes on Monday morning. Ask what they lose and what you gain. Ask how you'll know if help helped." He added a 4th and circled it. "Slow down." The room nodded. Slowing is the only speed with memory. Jenna followed with her video. No music, no lacquer, just her face and verbs. The vocational school kids watched, then asked her questions the way teenagers ask, with precision, that scares adults who prefer vagueness. "How do you tell if you're rescuing or rehearsing control?" one girl asked. "You listen for the word now," Jenna said. "If your plan needs to happen now to make your anxiety stop now, you're rescuing yourself. Start there." Mrs. Whitaker recorded her piece on the swing again for a group of Thursday night church ladies who came to see the place and brought pies like tithes. "If you like to handle people," she said into the phone camera, "check whether your hands are holding or hurting." Amen? I could hear it even though they were polite enough not to say it aloud. The cabin filled and emptied like a lung. People came frightened and left taller. They learned the kettle song. They wrote on Eddie's index cards. They signed their names under aphorisms they'd practiced as if they were vows. Card. Spend names slow. Spend receipts slower. Spend mercy fastest. Mr. Denton wrote, "I will say, my wife, less like possession, and more like gratitude." Mrs. Denton wrote, "I will say, you're safe with me," and let the sentence be a hand, not a leash. We added a little library, books with spines softened by years, a binder of the judge's favorite sentences, a photo of Eddie with the caption, "He left tools." People handled the photo like it might change temperature. Maybe it did. On the second Saturday, the vocational shop hosted Fix-It mornings on our porch. Kids in steel toes, elders with radios that needed new cords, toasters that wanted to toast again, a lamp whose pull chain had given up after 1978. Repair is a curriculum. You learn to take apart, to name, to clean, to reassemble without swearing in front of church ladies. Mark taught torque by feel. A boy named Jace taught Mark how to get a stripped screw out with a rubber band. We all clapped because learning should look like that more often. Patrice ran a small business session under the live oak. Invoices, cash reports, what to do when weather and clients both lie to you. She wrote "call before late" and underlined it with a smiley face for the benefit of the anxious. Bankers have humor. They just keep it in drawers with pens that never run out. Midweek, the judge himself came by in plain clothes and a hat pulled low like a man buying tomatoes without a speech. He stood at the gate and read the sign twice. "I stole your sentence," he confessed when I caught him. "The Bar Association thinks I'm quotable." "I accept royalties in pie," I said. He tapped the rail. "Nice joinery." "My son did it," I said, twice. He turned his hat in his hands. "I see a lot of people equate speed with love," he said. "You've given them a porch big enough to sit long." "We're farmers," I said. "We know what happens when you pick anything before it's ready." He nodded, tipped his hat, and left, like a man who had borrowed a cup of sugar and brought it back. Mark kept showing up early, staying late. He called his doctor. He found a meeting where men sit in a circle and let their throats unlearn tightness. He and Jenna fought differently, quieter, with calendars that included rest and sentences that included "I" instead of "you always." He called Lena twice a week and asked about her classes and did not once use the call to report on me. Jenna's business signed the retainer. Patrice sent 3 clapping hands, which is how a banker throws confetti without wasting paper. Jenna brought her camera gear and recorded a series we called Handle with Care, 5-minute lessons for adult kids, how to ask about pills without turning into a warden, how to evaluate a house without insulting it, how to run an errand without making the errand the point. She put them online, and strangers wrote from places with snow and from places where porches are balconies. "Thank you." My mother cried and said she felt seen. My dad turned the stove back on. One afternoon, Lena caught me staring at the quiet thunder sign like it was a grandchild learning to wave. "You okay?" she asked. "I'm practicing gratitude without the stage lights," I said. "Turns out it works better in shade." We painted a small line under the motto, "Mercy, then muscle." It helped the boys who wanted to build first and think later. It helped me. On the days when patience felt like I'd left a heavy grocery bag in the car and had to go back for it. Toward sunset on a Thursday, Mr. Denton rang the bell not as arrival or award, but as punctuation. He took his wife's hand. "We're going home," he said. "We know the timer song. We know the question. We know the difference between holding and hurting." "Take a card," I said, and he took 2. Left one on the table with his name on the back like a graduation signature. People leave pieces of themselves when they've learned something they want to remember. That night, after the sweep and the wipe down and the last porch check, Mark and I sat where the rail meets the post and watched the sky practice peaches. He cleared his throat. "I thought control would keep you. Turns out attention keeps you, and attention learns to sit." "Attention is a chair," I said. "We needed more of those." He smiled, side-eyed. "You know, I don't hate that this is the rest of my weekends." "Good," I said. "Habits look good on you." He hesitated. "Mom, I'm sorry about the night I came drunk. I still carry that like an extra key I don't know where to put." "You put it on the hook labeled already used," I said. "And you stopped trying it in doors that aren't yours." We sat with that. Crickets started their shift. A dog argued with distance. Jenna and Mrs. Whitaker joined us with lemonade. Patrice texted a photo of a welder standing proudly beside a new machine. The caption, "Your money bought this." His hands did the rest. Marjorie emailed a draft of a simple waiver with a margin note. "Your aphorisms are becoming clauses." Careful, or the legislature will adopt them out of context. I wrote back, if they add pie, they can have custody. We planned the next month. 2 more cabins? Not yet. Keep it small enough to know names. Add a Tuesday class, how to say no without burning the bridge. You'll need Friday, a Friday one. Kettles and calendars. Rituals that quiet rooms. On Sunday, church let out into sunshine that felt like a generous thought. People shook my hand and said, "Quiet thunder taught my sister to breathe." My father didn't sell his truck because he learned to say not yet. The judge quoted you. The bank didn't kill my business. It taught me to count. I nodded like a mailbox receiving the letter you prayed someone would write. Weeks slid into a rhythm. Arrivals, lessons, departures. Bells rung for small victories that are big because they happen at the right time. One evening, the vocational kids surprised me with a gift, a carved plaque for the cabin door. Eddie's tools. Below that, in smaller letters, he left them for us. I traced the letters with my finger the way you check if the paint is dry when you know it's not. "Put it up," I said, and they did. Solemn like a flag raising, silly like teenagers who can't help being alive. When the heat finally broke and the pecan leaves decided to imitate coins, we hosted a potluck. No speeches, I promised. We ate on mismatched plates. The judge came with a cobbler. Patrice brought a salad that confessed it wanted to be pie. Marjorie arrived late, hair wind-tossed, with news. The county wants to list Quiet Thunder on their resource page. They asked for a motto longer than a motto. "Tell them this," I said. And I stood. Not to perform, but to let my lungs have space. We're not a cure. We're a porch. We teach kettles and sentences. We lend chairs. We ask folks to sit in them until the urge to arrange passes and the desire to ask arrives. We're just time, held kindly. People clinked cups against cups. Someone rang the bell because bells deserve jobs. After the tables cleared and the last dish found a ride home in the wrong car, I stayed on the porch with Eddie's Polaroid. The new rail held my forearm and kept me steady when a memory tried to move me. I spoke to the man in the picture because grief cohabits with joy better than anyone admits. "We did it the way you asked," I said. "Education over victory, mercy with a map." The night answered the way nights do, by letting you hear your own voice well enough to believe it. Before bed, I set the flame low, the timer, the kettle. I wrote the day's line on an index card and tucked it under the heart-shaped paperweight. Help that replaces choice is not help. In the morning, I'd find it again with the coffee measure and the steady mug and the porch beyond the screen, ready to host another sentence. When I finally turned out the kitchen light, the bell lifted once in a breeze and tapped the post so softly you could miss it. Quiet thunder indeed. A year turns out to be exactly enough time to learn a porch by heart. Quiet thunder didn't get bigger. It got truer. We kept one cabin and one rule about chairs. If you sit, you listen. The bell learned new reasons to ring. Arrivals, good news, and sometimes the sound a sentence makes when it finally lands. Mark teaches 2 nights a week now. He writes on the chalkboard with patience that didn't come standard, circling slow down like it's a gear you have to find before the engine behaves. He still sands the rail every spring. He doesn't erase the seam. Some lines deserve daylight. Jenna's agency gave up glitter and kept clients. She films 5-minute lessons on our porch, handle with care, and the comment box fills with grown children who didn't know help, had a verb tense besides now. Patrice from the bank watches the numbers like weather. When storms gather, she calls before it rains. Mrs. Whitaker brings ziti and a prayer card, then scolds me for washing the dish and does it herself anyway. The judge stops by out of uniform, tips his hat at the sign, and steals one more sentence for a speech I will never hear and don't need to. The vocational school kids keep fixing radios and toasters on Saturdays. They taught me a trick with a rubber band for stripped screws. I taught them that a timer is a handrail you can hear. We trade competence like recipes. Some afternoons, I sit with Eddie's index cards and write new ones in my own hand. We made a little binder, the porch rules, and lend it to people who promise to underline instead of argue. My favorite page is still the first. Help is not control with better branding. We added one beneath it. Mercy first, then muscle, then tea. As for the farmhouse, it stays loud in the right ways. Lena brings gossip and tomatoes. Mark brings quiet and screws sorted by size. Sometimes I find my son on the steps long after class ends, looking at the gate he hung straight, as if straightness were a language he's finally fluent in. We've had goodbyes, too. Mr. Denton mailed us a photo of a kettle and a note that read, "She asks before arranging now. I say yes more than I used to. That's what victory looks like when you've chosen education. It writes itself on postcards." At dusk, when the light lays its hands on the cedar, the new rail creaks a little, like it remembers the winter and forgives it. I set the flame low, turn the timer, and listen for the faithful song. Habit, handrail, hymn. If you drive by after dark, you'll see the porch light exactly where Eddie wired it, keeping watch without speeches. And if the breeze is right, you might hear the bell tap the post, soft as a heartbeat, sure as a promise. Quiet thunder still.